today on the Law Dad Roy podcast with Paul Doolittle, who is the Director of Class and Mass Actions at the law firm. And we're going to talk a little bit today about Paul's background, how he got into law. Paul has had a very interesting legal career, has done a little bit of everything, Swiss Army knife of civil litigation. So we're going to talk some about that, talk about how he came to this firm and doing class actions, and what he does now. What are class actions? Why are we doing class actions? Why are we doing mass torts? What does that look like? And why we do it here for the people. So, Paul, welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Glad to have you on. Tell us a little bit about your origin story. How did you, decide to become a lawyer, first of all?
As most people that know me will tell you, that I'm not qualified to do much other than argue with them. So, argument comes naturally to me. Debate comes naturally to me. My mother tells a story, and I've seen the pictures, that I was in kindergarten and kids would play with blocks. I stacked my blocks up and made a podium and dais, and I was starting to speak from it. So I was like, as a child, I was wanting to center the attention, be the attention, have some people listening, and it was really more about relaying information.
Right.
To me, the law allows you a very large vehicle to relay information to a lot of other people, not only just a jury, but the people that follow jury trials, that follow the results, and of course, there's the press that comes with that. And I think that's a way to make change. So the basic underlying tenet to me was make change. What can I do to change? What can I do to help? And it comes out of a very strong desire to help. I mean, I'm trying to figure out what I wanted to do in life. I wanted to have a career where I felt good, where I helped people, where I felt like I was making a difference in society, that I was contributing rather than taking away. It's a big thing for me, is to give more than you take. So I always felt like that was a really good avenue for me to have the ability to help people, whether it be one-on-one, whether it be a class action where you have up in thousands of millions, or just, giving people advice at the bar about what to do in their domestic situation.
Right.
Which is the number one common question you get.
Right. So for you, it was really a natural proclivity that, just kind of obviously developed through life, and you've obviously had a very successful legal career. Was it in law school, or was it before, when you decided that you were going to go, the civil route, or did you explore the criminal route? Tell us about that, because obviously there's a lot of different types of law.
Sure, and I've been really fortunate in the sense that I haven't really been stuck doing one or the other. I have really done criminal law my entire life. I've done civil law my entire life. It was a very difficult decision. I mean, it was real clear to me that I wasn't doing tax law.
Right.
Right.
Take that off the table.
I didn't have any appeal whatsoever. So, but all the other ones, actually everything caught my attention.
Yeah.
There were things that I obviously gravitated and enjoyed more than others. And, criminal law stuff, I still love criminal law. I love the aspects of it. The game is really real. It's real in civil litigation, don't get me wrong, but, when they come and take your clients away in handcuffs.
That's freedom.
Yeah. That's a big deal. When you can help somebody achieve freedom or right or wrong when they're being faced with jail of something they really didn't do.
Right.
Or when they did it, try to help them get the best result out of it they can. Having that, basically help them out through life, get you able completely by it.
Right.
So in the criminal law, you're actually able to affect people's life and help them be a better person.
Right.
Whereas in the civil law, I can only affect the other person by punishing them or something of that nature, and maybe recovering my clients. I can make my client's life better because of this accident happened, and now they've got to be in a wheelchair. Right. So we can make that an easier life. But you can't make the person that ran the red light drunk suffer more than what they are going to suffer. So you really can't. But when you provide that justice for somebody that knows that, hey, I know I didn't do it and I walked away, strong thing. So it was really a diverse group of stuff that I wanted to do when I first started practicing. And then it was very clear to me during law school, moot court, and those things that, trial work was what I wanted to do.
Right.
And, to give all due credence to my great friend, mentor, Ron Motley, best trial lawyer I've ever seen in my life.
Right.
And I couldn't imagine not getting to do what he did.
Right.
I had just such admiration for the skills in the courtroom, and the crucible of truth.
Right.
There's no bluffing there.
Right.
You got to either know it or you don't, and you got to make sure to master the knowledge in the most artful fashion that you can. So it's a difficult dance. It's a difficult place to be.
Right.
And you always got to be on.
That's right.
So I thought that was a challenge, and I wanted that. So I wanted courtroom experience, and that's how I I basically ended up starting a father and son insurance defense firm in Greenville that wanted to start a plaintiff's practice.
Right.
So they had insurance defense work I needed to do and start plaintiff's practice work I needed to do. The dad also knew a bunch of criminals, so he'd come in the office.
Right.
So I would represent them in different various, sundry cases and things of that nature. And so I got a real...
And you don't see that a lot. You don't see, especially now, I mean, with all the consolidation on the insurance defense side, I mean, that opportunity really doesn't exist.
Doesn't exist. And it was very fortunate for me. I felt great. Great admiration for still love Mr. Foster to death over the past, because I did get that experience. And not only that, I mean, on top of that, he had a lot of business contacts. So I ended up doing business with Doolittle. So I ended up representing car dealerships. I ended up doing buy-sell transactions with Wayne Huizinga, one of the largest car dealers in Florida, at $17 million as my second year out, right? And I'm handling this transaction and representing the large dollars in a car dealership transaction that I had no idea how you sell the inventory and parts. No clue, but learned. And I think that's one of the best things about the law. Is it changes every day. Even if you're doing the same car wreck case every day, it's still able, one of them's a different light. But when you're able to then do everything in the law, so I was able to do criminal work, business work, defense work, business litigation work. I was able to represent. In second year of practicing law school, I was representing every strip club in Greenville. They tried to move them out of town.
Colorful.
Constitutional law question. It just happened to be the same common law question we had at moot court. So the knowledge was already here. And I went, oh, great, sure.
Let's apply it.
Mr. Foster had done their incorporation work when they originally started. And the town was trying to zone them out. Completely, not even in the town. So here's a little tiny piece of acreage over here. And they came to ask him a question one day. He hollered over to my office and said, Paul, you know anything about this? Getting zoning them out of town? It just happens to be what we did, right? It was 2 years ago. Sure, I know. It's perfect. And so, it worked out great. I mean, so that diversity of experience also, I think, made me a better trial lawyer. Right? Because you're not stuck with just the knowledge of just this particular thing and that particular thing. You had to learn everything. And I was a philosophy major in undergrad, so learning everything is just in my nature. And learning both sides of the argument was, of course, all we did in undergrad, right? You pick a side, abortion. You're pro and you're con today. The next day you're con, you're pro. So you got to learn both sides. And then to me, if you don't learn both sides, if you can't argue both sides, then you really haven't understood the subject matter. You're really not qualified to give an opinion if you can't articulate the other side. Their points just as much. You can have your opinion, but it's a more intelligent opinion if you can outline what the other side is.
100%. So you started there. You get a big, diverse book of business. Obviously, kind of doing everything, learning every day. Where do you go next?
So after that, being the entrepreneur that I was, my own firm. So at that point you're developing your own business clients. You got some insurance defense clients. You got some knowledge that ain't known in the plaintiff's world. So I have some plaintiff's contacts. So, at that point it became obvious I could survive on my own, have my own clients and things. So I did that, and right as I did that, family life happened, new baby, and my wife said, new baby and opening a law firm is not two things you really want to do together at the same time. We're employed, and I'm like, well, timing. We didn't, we didn't get to make choices these timing. The Lord makes choices for the timing for you. And we're blessed, and we're very happy. And about that same time, an old good friend and mentor called me up, Ron Motley, and said, what are you doing these days? And I said, I'm doing this. And they had a Greenville office at the time. And, the Greenville office needed help. And he asked me to come in and help with the Greenville office, and they really need you there. And so, I did that because at that time I went home and told my wife.
Good timing.
Yeah, she thought it was great timing. I was torn about the timing.
Right.
She's going back to work for somebody
She just
else.
saw, consistent paycheck.
That's exactly right. It was the bottom line in the decision. The reason I actually joined was this consistent paycheck. We knew that no matter what, as opposed to, opening your own business, whether it be, selling donuts or whatever it is, you don't want people to go buy the donuts. And so it was definitely, and it was the right decision for a young family. So, and then luckily enough, it just, everything flew from there, and, kind of joined the firm, and, with Ron's firm and Joe's firm, and, I got to do all types of cases there, because I came in originally doing age discrimination cases, and there was a class action in DuPont up in West Virginia, and it was a result of doing that, and that was my primary function, and then I was exposed to some other cases, and then it was kind of like, well, what is going to work on next? And then So I just kind of went around and got everybody's opinion on what do you do?
Right.
It's like, oh, you do medical malpractice. How many cases do we have? Oh, not that many. Well, let me take some of them.
Yeah.
I'll do it. Let me go over here. What are you doing? Oh, this is the workers' comp division. Okay, well, I want some of those. This is the age retaliation. I want some of those too. And of course, I wanted to try asbestos cases. Right. I mean, you can't not practice there. And to me, you can't not practice there. You can practice there and not try an asbestos case. And that's a totally unique world of litigation that will never ever exist again, in my opinion, as far as trials going on all the time.
Right.
Literally, it was 2 years of my life. I think it was trials every single day.
Yeah, and they had the trials. I mean, really, in the beginning of the whole fund of all those things, really to set the values, right? Exactly. I mean, that was the and I know you had a big case out in Minnesota. I think you got I think is the largest asbestos verdict.
Still holds the largest, still stands. We were just talking with co-counsel yesterday. As a matter of fact, new co-counsel that we have in the case that we filed there. So we had an introductory call with him, and he knows the giant Indian statue in the courtroom where I tried in Ramsey County. So it was really nice reliving those memories with him, and he knew the verdict. I mean, it
knew about it.
Carried weight.
Right.
It's been very rewarding. I've been very fortunate. I mean, and I will tell you that we've all won cases we should have lost, and lost cases we should have won.
Right.
I'm 100% convinced it is just like behind every good man is a strong woman. Behind every good lawyer is a good paralegal.
Right.
Without the staff, without the support, without the help, you can be the best in the world, but you don't know what you've said because you're too tired from prepping.
Right.
You don't have somebody to help you get that stuff organized and prep. Then it's hard to feed your head to get ready.
Right, and we, I think we both speak from experience on that front because we have both been in a position where perhaps we did not have necessarily the best help at that moment in time.
Yeah, and it happens.
It happens.
Some people get sick.
Right.
People aren't on their A game that day.
It's harder, and it makes it harder.
Yeah,
and I think that's what a lot of people don't realize about the practice of law. There's this image that well, first of all, it's kind of cushy, and you sit in your office, your leather chair, and your, mahogany bookshelves and all this, and you just kind of smoke your cigar and think. And that's really not how it works, obviously. We know that. There's a lot of prep that goes into that courtroom appearance, first of all. That just looks like a lawyer in a book and now in front of a computer, drafting up things and really learning. I mean, it's all about learning the cases. Yeah.
Digging through the dirt.
Right.
Finding the little crucial fact that you're missing.
Right.
Which is one particular thing this firm is great at. I mean, finding the little pieces that are missing from the little case and making it into a bigger case.
Right.
I mean, that's the key.
Right.
And that's the joy, right? It's like, oh, look, and it's the triumph.
Right.
And it's the competition.
Right.
I mean, I'd be lying if I say it wasn't competitive, right?
Right. You have to be.
Winning's fun.
Yeah. You have to be competitive. There has to be something that drives, the long hours, the hard work, the constant looking back. Did I miss anything? Is there something there that we might be able to use? Looking at it a different way, and it's just constant. I mean, now you've been with the firm for a number of years.
Almost 3.
Yeah, 3. Yeah, and
seems like yesterday and forever.
Yeah, yesterday and forever, and really that came about. You and I know each other. We were acquainted, and we had started building a class action practice really just before COVID. Before COVID hit, and we had started building that that practice out, and we filed some cases like you do when you build out a practice. That's what you do. You have to file lawsuits in this business. And COVID really presented, in a lot of ways, some unique opportunities because there were a lot of things that were happening to a lot of people in the same way across the country. And one of those things that we got involved in at that time, I was the chair of the American Association for Justice Insurance Law Committee and ended up chairing the Business Interruption Litigation Task Force. And so we got involved in some of those cases. And then, as you know, we started doing these COVID tuition refund cases, and those things were gangbusters. We filed 50 of them or 60 or however many, in the span of a few months. And perhaps you remember exactly how it goes, but I think I basically just called you one day and said, hey, we need some help here.
Surprisingly, you placed, we were Facebook friends.
Yeah.
We've known each other. So.
Yeah.
And you said something on Facebook about if anybody knows anybody that does class action work wants to do it. And I sent you an email. I saw something about you. Is it serious? I didn't know. I was like, is it a joke? Is it not? I didn't take any shit to it because it happened to be literally I was scrolling Facebook because I was bored.
Right.
I didn't have anything to do. There was no competition. I'd be tired for the second time.
Right.
And I was bored again.
Right.
And this is kind of right after COVID, and the world was freeing back up
Right.
again, and I wanted to get back in that world.
Right.
And then I'm trying to figure out, just in my mind background, just trying to think, what am I going to do? How would I get back? Where would I go? What would I do? I'm going to do this, do that. And then, lo and behold, it was like the perfect thing. I've done class work for a while.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of class experience. I've done a bunch of class work. What you doing? And then literally you're like, oh, great, you're interested. Let's hop on a Zoom tomorrow. And I think I accepted your job within a day.
Yeah, it was fast.
Something like
yeah,
that.
yeah, whatever it was fast. We needed help. You had skills. You were willing to help, and it just kind of all worked out. We had some good early success, in getting leadership positions and things, which, is in the class world, the court decides who represents the client in most cases, not the client. And so starting a class action practice and kind of building that out during that period of time, you don't know, okay, are you going to have any success? And the other part of that is, well, if you don't get a leadership spot, you probably do not actually make any money. So you do all this work and you don't make money. Right. So you have to do a lot of work hoping that one of those things turns into money for your law firm and your family. So we had a lot going on. We had some success and you came in and, I think charitably, we could call it a startup.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, y'all done a great job.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I was sort of surprised about how far along it was.
Right.
At the same time, I was surprised about how far along we had to go.
Right. Right.
But that offered me the challenge that I was looking for. So that was prime.
Yeah, and we had a great basis with Akeem, who had obviously done some mass tort work and class work, in years past, and so had the contacts, and we had some people that we could rely on and call. But really with those COVID tuition cases, we were filing so many of them because we got some early press nationally, and that just led to more calls. And people said, my children are being taken advantage of. They're sending them back home, but they're keeping all the money. And we didn't think that was right. And so that really lended itself to a class action type case. And I think a lot of people have this question of like, well, how do I know if it's a class action, right? Because a lot of people call us and they say, oh, my case should be a class action. And it's not. They think it should be a class action just because they think it's a big case, and that's where you hear about the big numbers.
Right.
So, explain a little bit about what we look at when we're evaluating cases. What is the class action mechanism? What are we looking for? What are we looking at in these things?
Sure. So the first thing we're looking for is the wrong.
Right.
Without a wrong, without somebody committing a wrong, we wouldn't have a job. So luckily, the world is not full of altruist people that have stopped committing wrongs so far.
Right. Thank you, Adam and Eve in the garden.
Exactly.
That set this whole thing. Or not thank you, but whatever.
But that's so you're looking for the wrong. You're looking for something that moves you, something that you're interested in, something that is going to, something you want to get behind and spend your time.
Right.
Like you said, you're going to spend lots of time.
Lots of time.
And then you're also taking on the burden of representing thousands of individuals, or hundreds of individuals, at least, and thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands.
Right.
And so it's a big responsibility. You want to make sure you got the wrong, and then you need to make sure the wrong happened to everybody the same way.
Right.
So it has to be everybody the same way. It can't be, well, I read the stoplight, right, is mistimed, so therefore it's caused 16 accidents.
Right.
You can't file a lawsuit for every accident. A class action for every case that every accident's happened at that intersection because the stoplight's mistimed. Because each one of the facts is different. You got a different type of car, different types of brakes, different types of daylight situations. Sun was shining, sun not shining, night.
Our offers of proof and the facts that support it are different in every case.
Is different, as opposed to, we know that you've got a data breach cases. Those are the one big things that we're doing a lot of now, because all of our information is sensitive. Our information is out there on the internet, and it's the company's job to protect it. Right. And if they allow somebody to breach it, and our data has been harvested by the dark web and by the criminals,
it all happens the same way.
All happens the same way.
Right.
Everybody had the same information. You might have more information in your file than I had in my file, but all of us had our date of birth, our social security number, and all the sensitive information. So that's the same thing that's happened to everybody in the same way. Right. So they're basically the same liability for the company, and that's what allows a class treatment to do that. Because otherwise, to have it where you had to file individual suits,
Right.
It's a nightmare because you just can't afford a filing fee to file an individual suit for a small recovery.
Right.
So if your bank charges you, for example, overdraft charges, right?
Right.
So a bank overdrafts you when it shouldn't have. And so they charge you $25. Well, you can sue, you can sue your bank for $25.
You can, but it's going to cost you $482.
Right?
Right? File a lawsuit is $482 or whatever it is just
Plus
to file
service.
a lawsuit, plus service. And all you can get back out of that lawsuit is the damage they caused you. You don't get, just on a straight case like that, you're not necessarily entitled to fees and costs and all that. So, you're spending $480 to go get $25. No one's going to do that.
Right.
But if we've got 100,000 people that got hit with that 25, now we've got enough, to make it make sense.
Yeah, and it allows the public to recover that. It allows us to keep a check on companies, right?
Right.
Because otherwise, why wouldn't they charge somebody $5 extra every time? Because I do it $5 times a million. Well, guess what? I got extra money.
Right.
And so, and I can't be sued for that. I get practically insulated from suit. So the class action vehicle, and that's the genesis from it. It allows a recovery, and that's when you get right down to it. And the Supreme Court's debating the case right now.
Right.
Yesterday, the main argument is how in the world, if we don't address this issue, then how in the world can anybody file these suits?
Right.
You're practically speaking, you're going to ask for individual inquiries, and most of them are going to file it. And the ones that do, they're going to be a nightmare for you and clog up our court systems.
Right.
And the other people can't get justice.
Right.
So you got everybody looking for $5. And you got the major case where the person is in a quadriplegic for a car accident, they can't get a court date because the $5 cases are clogged up the system.
Right.
So it's partly management, partly benefits, partly everything that works out for us.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Just had a golden retriever join us, but in the studio here. No, but a lot of people think, and I hear this all the time, and I talk to people about it. Well, the lawyers, I heard about this case where everyone's getting $25 and the lawyers are getting $200,000, and that's because the lawyer's recovery is based on the total amount that they got back for the class, right? Sure. And the theory is
$20 times everybody.
$20 times everybody, and they got some piece of that. And the important part is, in class action cases, the court sets the attorney's fee.
They do.
Right? And we have to justify it. We have to show our hours, exactly what we did. And, sometimes these are contentious hearings.
Very contentious.
And, the court is saying, hey, I don't think you're getting compensated for, reading emails or whatever. And it's like, well, I wouldn't have had to read the email if I didn't have the case, but, okay. It's just the way it goes, right? And you don't know what you're walking into, but you've already done all that work. And then as the lawyer, you have to go back to the court after the case is settled, after it's been approved for the clients. In other words, they're getting their money. You have to ask for your money. You made no money to that point. And these cases, we still have COVID tuition cases from 5 years ago, from 2020.
To your point, I think it is probably the fairest compensation method of how attorneys get paid.
Right.
You can negotiate an hourly rate with the client.
Right.
Any way you want. You can negotiate a percentage recovery of the fee. Like everybody's heard, I take a percentage, you get nothing up front. Or you can have, in this situation, right, it doesn't matter what our attorney fee contract says. Because at the end of the day, the court's going to evaluate. We have to make a petition to the court and ask for X number of dollars in attorney fees. We have to say, we recovered this, we got this result, and we're asking for this, and whatever percentage that may be. You can't be more than a third.
Right.
But, you're asking for this percentage of this number. The court then has a separate, that's a document that's required to be filed. Objections can be filed to that.
Right.
The court then has a separate, complete fairness hearing that's separate from the approval process of the class action settlement. It's a separate hearing on just your attorney's fees and costs.
Right.
Where the question is, did you do enough work? So if you're asking for a $100,000 fee and you put 2 hours in it, you're not going to get that fee.
Right.
The court's going to cut that fee.
Right.
So I think it's probably the most, it's certainly the most scrutinized fees and lawyers. Nobody goes to your office and asks what your deal with your client. That's typically really confidential.
Right.
But in a class action, because you're doing it on the benefit of the whole class, you have to go in and the court has to say that those fees it's about a 15-factor test.
Right.
That the court goes through and evaluates each one of these factors on the record, even in an uncontested hearing with no objectors.
Yeah.
It's on the record. And to your point about, I have 3 approval hearings this year that we hope to get concluded before the end of the year.
Yeah.
And, those are from cases that you started filing in 2020.
Right. So 5-year-old cases.
No pay.
Nope.
All the expenses we're asking for you to reimburse to this.
Yeah, that's the untold part. We spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on these cases,
that have been sitting out there. And if we lose, $100,000 goes away. Our time goes away.
Right.
I mean, you paid me for my time. So not only are our expenses, but you paid for my time in getting to the court. And so all those hours, if we're not approved, if the court doesn't bless our fee, or doesn't feel like we deserve that much, then we're just stuck with whatever that is.
Right.
So that's, I think it's the most fair fee arrangement in the world.
Yeah, and I mean, on the practical side of the equation is these cases in general are really hard. These are some of the hardest cases, if not the hardest cases, right? Class action cases, mass tort cases, very difficult. The law is really complex. It's different across the country. I mean, we have cases pending in I don't know how many states, 40 states or something, most of the states, maybe more, and the law is different. Filed a case in Utah the other day. Okay. So, and the law is different. You have to, obviously you got to pro hoc in or whatever. You got to brush up. You got to learn the law in a lot of cases. You got to figure out what their rules are. You got to, adjust all that. And then you got to win. Because if we don't win, we don't get paid, right? So we've got to win. We don't win every case. I think that's important. We try to pick winners, but we also pick cases that are important, even when we know they're long shots, and some we win, some we lose. Sure. And so you do all this work and you go through the process. But on the practical side, a lawyer like you has done a lot of things. You could go handle, this period of time you were running nursing home cases or medical malpractice, you said, right? Yeah. You negotiate that with the client. Usually that's a 40% fee, sometimes more if you're going into trial or whatever. But 40% fee on that case, that's what you get. There is no court approval, court oversight, court nothing. I mean, literally, if you file that case on day 5, you're entitled to 40% because that's what your contract says. Right. I always say, and I believe this in my heart of hearts, that the contingency fee is critical to our system because it puts the lawyer's skin in the game, right? And so we're in there. We want you to win. We're going to do everything possible for you to win. We're not over at the cocktail party striking a deal with defense lawyers because we want to be buddies with them or football tickets from the insurance company or any of that crap, right? We need to win. Because that's how we get paid and that's how we pay our bills and feed our families and all like that. So I like the contingency fee. That's all we do here. I mean, as you know, we don't do any hourly work at all. But even a step beyond that is in the class action spectrum where you got a contingency fee, but you also got court oversight and court approval, double scrutiny.
And it's after the client gets paid.
After the client gets paid. The client already got it.
Yeah, like the ones that I have coming up soon. I mean, the clients are getting their checks being mailed by the administrator.
Right.
They've been funded.
Right.
We don't know if we're going to get paid yet.
We might get paid, might not get paid. And so, that money, it comes out of the whole pot, obviously. But it's a lot of work that goes into that. It seems obvious that if a bank, in your example, charges an overdraft fee of $25 when they shouldn't, that money just is automatically due. Seems obvious. It's not under the law.
Lawyers will notice I find some defense.
That's right. It's not under the law, right? Every data breach doesn't result in a recovery. There's cases go to the Supreme Court every year for the last few years where there were data breach losses, failure to certify a class. No damage. Your email and your phone number and your date of birth and all that's out there. Well, that's okay. As long as no one has actually stolen your identity. There's some courts that have come down that way.
There are.
And that's obviously, we don't think that's right, but that's how, at the end of the day, we don't get to decide. All we get to do is initiate the fight. We get to file the lawsuit, and then we get to deal with the incoming for the rest of the days until we prevail or not. You mentioned, file a case the other day in Utah. I know that you're on the road a lot. It's a lot of, since COVID kind of went away, a lot of this has blossomed into air travel. What's your favorite courthouse that you've been to, in your career, and why does that one stick out?
Interesting. I was a big fan of the old courthouses.
Okay.
Right? So when I'm traveling, when I look at, even if we're in the big modern courthouse, I'll always go look at the old one if I've got time.
Yeah.
I go to do a tour of them.
Yeah.
They're fascinating buildings. great, right? The history of the court system is I'm mesmerized by it. I mean, South Carolina, we have a courthouse in Walhalla, South Carolina. It's a big old giant historic white towered building that just beautiful on the outside and beautiful floors on the inside. Our courthouses typically all of my life have been special institutions, churches, courts, and so they generally look nice. And that, it's funny you asked me that because it would really be the most recent argument that I had was in the two I will tell you, but the most recent argument was in the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals.
Okay.
Out west, and they had just, it's on the National Historic Monument. They had just redone it. It's been about 15 years redoing everything and masterfully bringing back all of the woodwork, all of the artwork, and then going out to all the former justices and getting relics from them, donations, like their college football that all the teammates had signed, and the estates and some of the deceased ones would donate the robes and things of that nature. So they had tons of display cases. I mean, I probably spent an extra 2 hours and only saw like 25% of it.
Right.
It was that well done. And as you know, all the courthouses originally were the post office boxes.
Right.
That's where you get your mail. You got your mail at the court, you got your court at the court.
Yep.
And so they redid all of the old mailboxes and they refurbished them. So if you've seen the old mailboxes that the brass wears off and gets sent around in blackish, and it's pretty, but these were all polished and new. And it was described that the Denver mail system went through this courthouse. And back in the day when that post office opened, they processed 30,000 pieces of mail a year.
Wow.
And you think about it, the beginning of the time when you're doing, this is horseback, right?
Right.
You're riding horses delivering your mail. Yeah. And now we press send and you've got it instantly. And like, did you get that email yet? No, let me hit refresh, and you're like, where is it? Right. Yeah, it reminds you of the past. It's important to remember the future to know the past, right? Yeah. So it really sticks out in your head there. The other most unique one I think I would ever, this is a pretty big, I don't think I'll ever see this again. In the Snowflake data breach class action litigation, we went to Butte, Montana. Yeah. Was there in this court. We asked the multi-district litigation panel to send this case.
You argued for that, before the panel. That was in Nashville. The panel was sitting in Nashville, I think. For that was in
Nashville. I actually ran into you there. You were on business on another matter. And so in Nashville, we asked them to Butte, Montana because it had not had many class actions centered there. Yeah. And the real good court's just a real good judge. Yeah. And so they sent us there. So the first hearing we had is in Butte, Montana. Of course, you have to fly to Butte, Montana and drive almost to Canada. If you know where Butte, Montana is, it's almost in Canada. But we went into the courthouse, and of course, I'm doing my normal thing and looking outside the courtroom, and I'm asking the deputy there. I said, this interesting story about it was a gentleman who had gone in for court. It was a DUI. It was a prohibition thing, and so he was selling, illegal liquor at the time. Right. And they arrested him. He didn't think much of it, so he showed up with his 2 pistols and started shooting up the courtroom and killed 2 of the officers. Wow. Two of the what do they call the people back in time? The liquor people, the bad liquor guys. What was the name of those guys? I can't remember what it was. But he killed 2 of the guys that had arrested him and shot the court, shot at the bench, and you could still see the bullet lodged in the bench. And literally, it's right in line with the judge's chest. I mean, it's... Oh, wow. Yeah, it's amazing. And the story... That's an out west story. True, right? I had no idea that and the fact that they kept the slug is still in the bench. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Was amazing. So, Butte, Montana. Montana. So, and it's a long story short story long. Yeah. They actually could... So they got a hung jury the first time. Yeah. On the murder charges. And hung jury the second time. With the bullet in the bench. The bullet in the bench in the same courtroom. And then eventually he eventually served a small amount of time and got back out and became a prosperous member of society. Oh, yeah. There you go. Rehabilitated. Yeah. Took you a second chance. Yeah. So wrapping up here, we have a lot of, you talk about 30,000 pieces of mail going through Denver a year. I think we have 30,000 pieces of mail coming through here every single year probably, or maybe even month. I don't know. Twice a day. Yeah, twice a day it seems like the mail that stacks up. But we have a lot of mail that comes and messages that come from young lawyers that say, I really want to be a class action lawyer, and I really want to be involved in class actions. And you've actually done
a phenomenal job at the firm on putting together, extern programs and law clerk programs for some of these students, over the summer. And we have people every summer, and then we have some people that stay and people that come back, and it's really been a good thing. I mean, for law students and lawyers that, might even be in a different career path that think they want to do class actions, what would you say to them about how do you approach it? What does it look like? I think a lot of people think that, these things just sort of fall out of the sky, but you and I are communicating multiple times a week, 5 a.m. Hey, did you see this headline, that headline? This is a case, that's a case. Do we have a client? All this sort of stuff. I mean, what do you say to somebody about what it's actually like, and what they should do, if they do have an interest in getting into it?
I think to me, you have to be well-rounded. So I think a lot of lawyers can get centered on just the job, and they forget about the community.
Yeah.
Right? They don't get involved in the Rotary Club. They don't get involved in the church. They don't get involved in that. And I don't care what it is. Just get involved. Go out and go to the pool and talk to people.
Right.
Go out and, go ask to sit with the mayor. They'll sit with you. Ask politicians, can I come visit with you for a day? Ask judges, they'll come let you sit on the bench for a day. Get exposure to everything you possibly can. Go to businesses and ask for that internship at the business.
Right.
Because if you don't understand the business world, then you can't understand what the reaction is going to be when you sue.
Right.
So the more that you can expose yourself to the more diverse things that are out there, the more you're going to be competent to handle the things that are going to come your way later. Because you never know what they are. You don't know what type of wrong is going to come in the door tomorrow. We don't know what type of wrong we're going to read about it. And they're all different industries. What we learned in the college and college and university industry is that that's a completely separate industry that I've ever dealt with before.
Right.
I always thought I knew most about the college education, but I didn't know much about what the deans and the people do behind the door and how they run the business and keep it going. So learning all of that, I had to go. I called some of my old professors and said, "Who's going to talk to you about? Tell me about the backside. I know how you teach classes.
Right.
I've taught toxic torts. I know you taught classes.
Right.
Teaching's one thing. Relaying what I know to the students in order to get them to be able to be smart enough to take the test.
Right.
And that's easy.
Right.
It's the backside. How you run this giant place with buildings all over, and how to get the students moved and in and out of dorms.
Yeah.
And especially when you have to something like COVID upsets it, and you have to redo everything.
Right.
So you have to kind of put yourself in that administrative role to see what should you have done.
Right.
What would be the best course of action?
Right.
Should we keep everybody's money when we send them home and tell them to press play on a video?
Right.
We don't think so.
We don't know. Right.
Right. We think we don't think so. We think that the professors should have also had to forego the salary. Right.
Right.
Students had to forego the education. Professors still got paid.
Right.
So
100%.
they didn't lose any dime.
Right.
And our students lost education. So that's why we said there's a difference. And we again make sure we understand that we weren't saying that there was a no value given to the students by playing the video at home, but it certainly was different when what they bargained for the in-person, on-campus education and seeing the friends and playing intramural football and all those things that are part of the college tuition price.
Right.
And so we thought that was important. So the diversity to me, getting out
there,
and
just knowing as much as you can know about the world. You and I, every week, multiple times a week, 5 a.m., whatever, 6 a.m., 6 p.m., 9 p.m., kind of whenever something is happening that's interesting, we're communicating about it. Could be a salmonella and peanut butter case.
Right.
Well, that's bad. We know that. That's a wrong.
Yep.
You should not sell me peanut butter that has salmonella. The next question is, well, how does salmonella get into peanut butter? Right? So then we have to actually figure out, maybe there's birds flying around inside the peanut butter factory and they're pooping in the peanut butter.
Right.
Well, that's interesting. That probably shouldn't be a thing, right? So that we got that. So we're learning food processing. And then we say, okay, well, there's a data breach of, Roper Hospital right here in Charleston. And we say, okay, 800,000 affected or, whatever the number is, doesn't matter. We say, okay, well, how did it happen? So then, that afternoon, we're looking at the intricacies of, data privacy technology. Encryption
to do to protect it,
right? And then it just so happens that some plant over in Georgia catches on fire, and we've got this plume of smoke going all over, and we're like, well, how did that happen? And so it's a constant learning process, and so you really have to be to be constantly learning. You really have to be always on your game, but you got to be curious. You talk about being entrepreneurial. You really have to enjoy it. Otherwise, it's a real drag.
True.
You know,
I think curiosity is one of the biggest attributes of lawyers. Somebody tells me all the time. The question comes up: what is the number one quality you need to be? I'm like, curious.
Curious.
Not just I want to know more. I want to know how does how do these explosions happen? How does the education system work?
Right.
How does the security on a data breach go? How do you lock up the computers?
Right.
What do you do? How does that work? It fascinates me.
Right.
And I've never been satisfied with putting the same mirror on a Ford truck every day.
Right.
This job always changes and allows you the opportunity to be as curious as you want to be. And the more curious you are, the more you're going to learn, the more you're going to be able to represent your clients. And that, at the end of the day, is what we really are here for. Recovery for our clients. My clients are important. Our clients have been injured. Our clients have been hurt. And in whatever way they've been injured and hurt, we're here to help them. So that's to me, and that goes back to the whole thing. I get satisfaction and reward from helping other people.
100%. Thanks, Paul.
Absolutely.
Enjoyed it.
Yeah,
it's been great. Thank you for listening to the Law Dad Roy podcast. If you have any questions for me that we can talk about on the pod, follow us, DM us on Instagram, reach out on Instagram. We're at Law Dad Roy. You can find us there on YouTube, Facebook, wherever you decide to connect. We look forward to hearing from you.
That's it for this week's episode of the Law Dad Roy podcast. Stay tuned for next week with Herb Glass, one of PWA's top lawyers, discussing his career, why he does what he does, and the process he uses to help his clients maximize their settlement. It's a deep dive into the ins and outs of the legal profession that you won't want to miss. See you next and every Monday at 9 Eastern, wherever you find your podcasts.